Oh my God.
And then you get to the top, and it's the most beautiful view you've ever seen. And I'm just sitting up there taking pictures, and she's like telling her grandkids, like pointing at me. This is so
Oh,
terrible. Hello and welcome to the American Soccer Analysis Show. I am Kieran. I am joined by Harrison, High Life Crow, and Benjamin the Boss Bellman. The nicknames are back, people. The nicknames are back.
the
I thought about it on my drive
Those,
home.
those just rolled. I like it.
that was smooth, dude. That was
It
smooth.
was. Ian would be proud. Ian would be
Yes.
proud. Ben is the boss today for one specific reason. We're going to talk about the Rapids today. Did you guys catch the game on the weekend? Did you catch any fun games in MLS this weekend? I saw TFC get drilled by Vancouver, which was not fun. But I did also watch the Rapids.
I watched a replay of Seattle just absolutely lap.
Yeah.
5-0.
Yeah. I saw the score and I was like, huh?
That felt therapeutic.
We're gonna talk about Montreal later a little bit too. In the mailbag section, we got some listener questions because Montreal are going to come up based on some other things we looked at. It was a weird weekend. Like there were some odd games. Cucho comes back from his like Wilfred Nancy ban and gets a red card immediately, which I thought was funny.
I didn't even see the play. What did he do?
He gets pushed and fouled, and as the guy runs past him, he like kicks him in the groin, and it's like the most clear red card ever.
Yeah.
Well, did you hear what came out? They said what he got banned for?
No, what did he get banned? I saw a clip,
I didn't hear that,
but I didn't know if this was actually what it was.
So because according to ETR and Doyle, he was sat for 2 games because of his attitude coming off the pitch being subbed out.
Okay, so the clip they showed in like the weekly preview content was him yelling at the goalkeeper coach. The goalkeeper coach, and this he will never hear this, so this is funny, is a guy named Phil Berger, who used to be TFC2's goalkeeper coach. And made the move down when Bez and everybody went down there a little bit after that. But yeah, he used to be TFC2's goalkeeper coach. So I saw the clip. I was like, oh, that's Phil. That's very funny.
Small world, man.
Yeah. So that it was. I don't know. It was a weird week. There's a lot going on. Canada are in a shootout with the US right now in the She Believes Cup. So by the time you're listening, you'll know who won. Hopefully, it's Canada. Let's get into it because there's a lot to talk about with the Rapids. Ben, you went to the game at home, not the one against Miami.
Yep.
And you recorded a little voice note of us. So listeners, you're going to hear that now. And Ben's going to talk about the game, and then we will join you right back in a second.
All right. It is your boy Ben from the ASA Show. We are at Dick's Sporting Goods Park right after the Rapids win 3-2 with an overtime goal from Georgi Mihailovic. I previewed both these teams, and it is kind of what I expected to see. LAFC came out with a super low block, very dangerous on the counter, especially in the first 20 minutes. Flurry of chances between like 5 to 15 minutes in there. And right at the end of that, Atuesta gets his goal. Apparently, Kevin Cabral sort of turned his back, which let that in. A little disappointing, but it was a sweet shot. Zach Seven had a bunch of other sweet saves, so I'm going to give him this one. Honestly, through the first half, this looked like an offense for the Rapids that was missing its engine, and everyone keeps talking about how we're missing Connor Ronan. It was really obvious to me in person. We are playing with us back to a double pivot that is not our first choice, and it showed, but there were set-piece chances. We got a corner. Georgie got his assist as well as his winning goal with Moise's first goal as well for the team. Go Canada. Kamani Stewart-Baines gets the assist on Georgie's goal to win it. We get a crazy red card from David Martinez. 2 really dumb yellow cards from what I could tell, just totally needless, and that's enough. They rode this crowd to victory at the end. That free kick goal from Georgie. I forgot about that one. 2 goals for Georgie. Good Lord. This is the Georgie game, I guess. Yeah, man. Great win, but I think my biggest gripe is we need Connor Ronan back. The number of times I saw Ollie Raz just like get the ball in the middle of the field, have a wide open option, and not even pick his head up to find him. You know, it's clear that he's just trying to find his feet in this league right now. You know, I think this is the first string of games that he's really gotten some run of play, so great for him, but it's clear that he still has a lot of developing to go. So great win. Still some room to go. Got to be disappointing for LAFC on a lot of levels, but this was a fun one, folks. And we will be talking soon.
So that was Ben. That was Ben at the game. Ben, did you have fun? Was it a fun game?
It was a
the
fun
atmosphere
game.
Sounded cool. Like
Yeah,
you could
no,
hear
it
the
was-
songs in the background.
It was a fun atmosphere. It was the first time I'd been to the stadium, nice weather, so I think that sort of helped the vibe. It started a little quiet, but yeah, by the end, once that red card happened, you know, the whole stadium was just into it.
So I want to get into one thing you mentioned about Georgie's performance, because the Apple TV MLS content this week, there was actually a really great preview that Sasha and BWP did looking at Georgie's performances so far, and kind of breaking down like some of the things that aren't going right for Georgie. And it was funny because they're showing it from a game where like he scored 2 goals and an assist, something like that.
Mhm.
And they were showing these clips about how like Colorado really haven't done a good job of like getting him the ball facing forward in that zone 14, in that creative spot that we saw he was so deadly for Montreal.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm wondering, like, do you feel similarly? Is that cherry picked? Like, because something I'm seeing is like they end up wide to cross a lot,
Mhm.
and Georgie is kind of the guy who should be knitting things together to not have that. What do you think?
No, I think it's a tough one because I think part of it might be on Georgie, because I remember watching a few moments in the first half before he got the corner kick assist and thinking, this isn't fast enough, or he's getting closed down. It's hard to remember how much of it was due to team shape or lack of options. I'm sure there was some opportunities where he was open and was missed, because I remember Larraz just not picking his head. Like that's one of the things I just remember is like he hasn't stood out in a negative way, but he has not stood out in a real positive way yet. And there were opportunities for him to switch play and really find a moment where the Rapids could counter or open something up. So I think that's part of the issue. But I think it's still the team gelling. So we can start to get into the stats a little bit, but like I think so. I've got an outline. So, in terms of like, do you guys want to just, because I remember part of the reason we wanted to do this was the GM vote in the athletic survey voting the Rapids with the top off season. So I think that's sort of like the context to all of this.
Yeah, that was it's been a while since we recorded, so I kind of forgot that was our impetus here. Yeah, so if we think back to the GM survey, which came out like literally the day after the last podcast came out, I think the Rapids were like the number one off-season team.
It was them in Miami, basically.
Yeah, and I personally found that a little bit surprising because I liked the business they did. I thought the Armas hire was like a real negative. But even though I liked the business they did, it felt like just good business. Like it didn't feel like, I thought Portland's offseason, for example, was much better. But Portland didn't really get any love in that. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we're seeing this interesting narrative where like, and I have been guilty of this too, where like Colorado sucks. But the data,
and Colorado fans are very guilty of that too. Let me just go ahead and say.
Absolutely. But the data is maybe not super supportive of that. So Ben, why don't you tell us what you've got, and then we'll get into it.
So I think the place I want to start is a quote from that survey, which is, I don't know if this Rapids thing is going to work, but I see an identity for the first time. And leading up to that, the identity of this era, which I think is the first time we even had an identity, was distressed assets FC, you know, trading for other players within the league, using allocation to get players that were being slept on by their current teams, like Kellen Acosta at the time from FC Dallas, I think is the best example. That's changed. What's being slept on here is how homegrown dependent this roster has become. You've got Sam Vines, who just came back. You've got Cole Bassett, who came back from the Netherlands after his loan stint didn't go great. And now you've got Ollie Larraz, who sort of came out of nowhere this year to eat up 7 starting spots in defensive midfield. That really has surprised me. So there's a clear emphasis towards youth and towards homegrown development when you look at who's been training in the academy in Rapids doing who's starting to actually appear on the roster. Darren Yappy's a great example of that. He's gotten the start and has gotten some good sub minutes in. He's looked really dangerous. And then what's happened is the distressed assets has gone international. So now you get like that was Sam Vines, that was Georgi Mihailovic, and that very much was Rafael Navajo, who I'm going to hit on pretty strong later. But yeah, like I think in the eye test, this has just been a solid team. They defend in a mid block 4-2-2-2. So I think that's like the bit of Red Bulls coming in here. They don't press high, but when they do, they're pressing in groups, and that's really where Navajo's biggest value has come from. So I'll dig into the team stats first, and like please go ahead and stop me, either of you, if you've
Yeah,
got a
I think
question.
there's two things, Harrison, that I kind of want. I'm curious what you think about this. And this has been like kind of stuck in my head since like Georgie was in Chicago. How do you feel about a Georgie Nico Ladero comparison?
In the context that
Like,
they work better on the outside going in.
so yeah, so this is
So
my
kind of
thing
that
with
inside out type.
yeah, this is my Georgie thing. Like in Chicago, Georgie only played in midfield. And
Right.
his best seasons with the Fire were deeper, where he was like this deeper passing midfielder. But then he goes to Montreal and he's like this wide 10 in a 3-4-3 and cooks. He's like his best seasons ever. And now he comes back to Colorado after a stint as at Alkmaar, where like it doesn't kick off for him. Like he plays as like a pure 10 and it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Where now he's like this wide 10 in a 4-2-2 that is like sometimes 4-2-3-1, depending what the strikers are like. Um, but it's that same kind of Ladero juice where it's like you're not a winger, you are a wide playmaker. And I'm curious what
Right.
you thought about this as someone who obviously has watched like 500 Ladero games or whatever it is.
Yeah, a lot. No, I think that makes sense. I think that's a really good analysis in terms of a comparison, because I probably wouldn't have put that together. They don't have the same, I wouldn't say they have the same engine, but at the same time, they're both very comfortable running off with the ball and then running back on and showing for the ball, right?
Yeah, like the
And
off-ball juice. Yeah.
Mhm.
and I think also it also shows that Mihalovic has been really bad this year in receiving, which is something that Ladero often is really in the negative for, because he does drop so far back, right? And a lot of his passes that where he's picking up the ball and where he's taking the ball, they get him into trouble at times. And he plays a lot of risk reward. And just this year, it really hasn't played out for him. And I think that part of that is kind of Ben, you kind of alluded to it. I feel like there's a disconnect in between what he wants to do and what the rest of the team wants him to do. And I feel like maybe that's just he just hasn't gelled. And that's maybe a very noob uh impression of what I've seen from him, because I haven't watched but maybe a game and a half. I mean, I
Mhm.
thought he was I think at times he's solid, and that other times he just has no clue whatsoever what he's doing. So I can kind of see where him being that Ladero-esque playmaker. And if that's the case, I mean, that works pretty well with Amir Fernandez there on one side of the wing. But then what do you do in the middle of the park? If you move him out wide so that he can cut inside, you need to have somebody that's willing to also, zag with him. And
Yep.
Ben, do they have somebody like that? I mean, I
They
know
do.
try
They
to
had his name is Cole Bassett, and he has
Oh,
to play
I
defensive
okay, I let you
midfielder.
right.
Right? So I think this is it's. I think you're exactly right, Harrison. I think it's the team is gelling in general. Like it's a new coach. There's a lot of new players that have come in, especially who are trying to get starting minutes. But I also think this Ronan injury, as I mentioned in the clip, is really disrupting the flow of things, especially because like, I think Miami did this too. Like a lot of teams are sitting back against the Rapids. I don't know if it's just their circumstances and their game models in context, or if they're like trying to counter something against the Rapids. But like they're kind of comfortable with the ball. It's just these moments just aren't quite clicking. The run isn't quite right, or the pass just off or way off in some people's cases, unfortunately. But like it's a frustrating thing to watch because you see the pieces are kind of there, but it's just not comfortable yet. It doesn't feel comfortable. I think there's a lot of reasons why.
Yeah, I think that's like been a hallmark of Chris Armas, right? Like he took over Red Bull with this like reputation of being like a Red Bull guy through and through, but who had developed like a fairly decent possession model with Red Bull 2. And that was his like onus taking over from
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Marsh was like, we have to pass. And
Mm-hmm.
they were not bad. Like until they melted down in the playoffs against Atlanta, they were pretty decent. And at TFC, the first 3 months of his time at TFC were genuinely not bad before it all fell apart. And then whatever, he's taken a few assistant jobs since then, and whatever's happened. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if that's like teams have been like, yeah, Armis teams can't play with the ball, so we're going to sit off. That's a really interesting one. So Ben, what kind of one of the things that stood out is like the defensive improvement seems really apparent.
Yep.
Like what are you seeing in the data with that?
So let's go into the team stats because I think the defensive solidity's been far and away the biggest improvement. Like I remember watching games in 2023 and the team would be playing fine and then there'd just be this defensive meltdown like two a game and they'd cough up a point 3 point 4 x your g plus pass into their box. Someone would miss a clearance and then it would go in the net. Like I feel like 10 goals were scored that way. You look at the team level stats. First Harrison dug up some stuff that I thought was really useful. He looked at team receiving goals added allowed, and the Rapids compared to their what per match numbers last year are easily the most improved. They are letting in a quarter less of a goal through bad spots being wide open for receiving. So that's like there's structure. There's real defensive structure now. Overall, if you look at G plus difference, they're kind of average. They're like 12th in the league out of 29. If you look at XG, I think this is where we're talking about. Like there are opportunities here. There's positive stuff. They're eighth in XG difference, so they're generating some chances, and they're like not allowing very many chances. They jumped to 26th for goal minus XG diff by match.
Oh
So
no.
that's probably entirely because of the first half of Portland, which I'm considering a
Yeah.
mulligan. There's just some like goofy stuff happened that half, goofy stuff.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how some of this stuff rolls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is when you have
Especially through 7 games.
Mm-hmm.
right, exactly.
Yep.
Early on in the season, you're going to have these moments that stand out, especially in our data, and G Plus especially can be guilty of this in certain
Yep.
aspects. To where one player does something and it just stands out in a really excessively meaningful way, and it just kind of stays with them, especially early on.
So
This
here's
is
go ahead.
yeah, this is a thing we've seen, especially for players who are very level for the whole season, or they play positions that it's difficult to accrue lots of value, like center backs, holding midfielders are one where like you give away a penalty and you are like paying the price for that for 10 games. Like
Mhm.
it's huge.
Yes,
And to some
100%.
extent, I sometimes we're gonna get into like ASA meta conversations later, but to some extent, I think that's actually like an accurate accounting of the game, where
Mhm.
like, hey, for most positions, if you give away a penalty, that is legitimately more valuable than anything you will do for 10 games.
Mhm.
Even if it doesn't feel right, like I don't think that's inaccurate. And the same for teams, right? Through 10 games, like one thing that's going to come up later is a mailbag question about like team shot quality differences. And like when we initially looked at it, Montreal had like the most scandalous improvement that anyone had ever improved because they've gotten a bunch of penalties. So their shot quality is super high when you don't filter
Mhm.
out penalties. So there's like lots of weird things like that. But the defensive improvement is really cool. Like receiving, we have seen is super predictive of defensive performances. Like this was Wilfred Nancy's Montreal thing, was that they gave up zero defensively. They did not let teams receive the ball in the half spaces in the final third. They did not let teams into zone 14 in the final third. It was a thing I flagged up in my Montreal preview this year about Laurent Courtois coming from Columbus, where his capybaras did not let teams into those spaces. Uh, in MLS Next Pro, and now Montreal. I didn't look to see where Montreal turned up in that list, but um, in terms of preventing receiving, that is like so much half of the battle.
So now I kind of want to move to the other half of the battle because this
Yes.
season, you all know that I'm a finishing isn't real guy.
Yeah.
My faith is being tested. And yeah, and like the Rapids just have no goal scorers right now, and it's what Doyle said at the beginning of the season. Matt Doyle, armchair analyst, he called this much. What it has me thinking about now is like, okay, what is finishing? Finishing is taking the right opportunities. Finishing is sometimes being selfish and taking a shot. If you notice, the goalkeeper is back a half step versus going for a pass that might technically be more high XG. I I'm a little worried that none of the Rapids attackers really have that killer instinct. And I like that Georgie sort of showed a flash of it at the end of the LAFC game, with that killer free kick and just getting his knee into that like mini cross from KSB. But like Navahu, okay, and I'm just gonna pivot to Navahu here. G plus hates him right now.
Oh yeah.
He is at negative 0.2 G plus per game.
Yeah, that's tough.
I mean, it's 7 games, but that's really brutal.
So
However,
That's honestly,
before,
that's insane. Has anybody ever been that bad? Like over the course of, I mean, thinking back,
probably
the only person that I could
Yeah.
think of last year, right, was comeback player of the year, 2023 SKC.
Polito.
Yeah, Polito.
Yeah, Polito wasn't quite that bad, but this is a perfect segue because this is what I was going to say before your however, and I want you to keep that in your mind because I'm curious to hear your however. The thing with Navajo that like really worries me is that Polito, you can at least, I don't agree with this case, but you can at least make the argument that like Polito is doing the Jesus Ferreira thing where he drops and links play so much. So because he's not in the box, he's not getting striker receiving boosts. And striker receiving is like the most overpowered skill in the G plus arsenal. And so like, yeah. And there's so many guys, like you look at the two best strikers in the league by G plus are Jovic and Benteke, who just park themselves in the box and don't do anything else.
Yep. Same with Wando.
Yeah, exactly. But like Polito
the
and
innovator.
Jesus Ferreira like has managed a slightly positive G plus because he's so good as a passer and he still gets the good shots, whereas Polito like doesn't really still get the good shots. It's not like Navajo is doing that. It's not like he is this like wicked false nine linker guy that like makes like Georgie is not getting shots taken away from his account. It's not maybe Cole Bassett is because that every time I look, that guy is in the box somehow from defensive midfield. His goal on the weekend was great. But yeah, so I'm curious to hear your however, but I am deeply worried about the striker thing.
Yeah, and I think that's legit, and that is a big worry of mine. However, I think his main value to this team is how good he is at the press, and that's not something we have a G plus for. And it's not just defending; it's positioning, it's work rate in terms of pressuring the back line and the goalkeeper in terms of doing things like a half second before they really want to. You can see it start to accumulate over the course of the game where you're like, oh, a quarter of these chances wouldn't have happened if it weren't for his press. So that's one thing where I'm like, this is Chris Armas saying to his striker, don't worry about scoring, play my system. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think that's important because if you go back to 2023, he like this player's story has been a little rough over the past few years. So I'll just do a real quick recap. He's a Botafogo player, academy player. I think they get relegated out of the Brazilian top division, and he goes on a tear the next season in the second division. He then gets bought by I think it's Fluminense or I forget.
Fluminense or Palmeiras.
Fluminense,
I think
it's Palmeiras. It was Palmeiras. Yeah, it was Palmeiras. He gets bought by Palmeiras, rides the bench, gets some Copa Libertadores minutes, but like he played 7 games over like 6 months for them. Mm-hmm. Then I think he played some like B team minutes too, but then he gets bought by the Rapids or loaned to the Rapids, I guess, with the purchase option, and arrives in a situation with it's the middle of the summer, your season's pretty much over, you're about to hit an extended break for the Leagues Cup because the Rapids crashed out after 2 matches, and then your coach gets fired. So like there's nothing
Yeah.
to like, that's a mulligan of a half year. So I think like he's starting from scratch. And I went back to look at his Botafogo highlights from when he actually was on a tear. This dude's a baller. Like he's so technically gifted. He's got like you could see the attitude in him. Like he looked like a different player. I've never seen that player on the pitch
I'd
for the
be
Rapids yet. So I hope we can get to that point before we have to think about this purchase option.
I'd be really curious to see like if we could get like Davies for like second division Brazil, because I think there's Davies for first division Brazil, but not second division.
Mm-hmm.
So I would actually love to see something like that. Yeah, I think the striker question is like the biggest part of the problem, because I should say problem. I think it's just the biggest thing to think about, because I really like Darren Yappy. He makes an excellent run for Cole Bassett's goal this weekend.
Yep,
Like
he opens that up for him.
so perfect. Um, but he doesn't score. He doesn't really get shots. Like he takes like 1.5 shots a game. They're not particularly good quality. And it's just very hard. It's just really hard to like have a functional attack when your striker doesn't link play super well. It doesn't get a lot of shots themselves. They kind of have to do one of the two.
Yeah.
Where does Stuart Baines kind of fit into that?
That's a good. I'm actually very curious about KSB, because KSB, was he second overall? Is that where or did you pick him fourth? I can't remember which
I
pick
think he was. I
it
think
doesn't
he was
matter.
fourth, and then we traded.
I just
our
remember
third
he was
pick.
a
Doesn't whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Kamani Stuart Baines is like, the kid's a track star and misses the beginning of the season because he's at CONCACAF U20s, just like getting 3 assists a game against like El Salvador, just sprinting down the wing and cutting it back for tap-ins. And now he's getting minutes, and now he's playing. So tell us about KSB. KSB, I think, is really interesting.
So I don't think he hasn't started a game yet. He's just had a couple sub appearances in the past couple games. He's been good. Like I think I was really impressed because I thought when I was watching the assist that he got happen live, I'm like, take that shot. Like this has been the theme. I'm like, we need to be taking more shots when we have the opportunity instead of thinking it around too much. But then he dinks it to the perfect spot for a perfect goal. I'm like, okay, so clearly you saw that. Like you had the foresight, because he was looking like he was going to shoot, and I think he talked about it afterwards. So he's got that in the moment intelligence, and he's definitely got the athleticism. I think he's probably not going to get over 1,000 minutes this season, just because there's so much of a logjam just all over the field for us attacking wise. And I think this team's going to be in the hunt, but I still think this is more of a we're getting our legs under us for a reload and a real push for 2025 situation.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of figuring out being done this year.
And Calvin Harris is there, who's like starting to get. He played the pass for the Cole Bassett goal.
You still have Cabral, who's got crazy XG and can't put it in the net to save his life.
Yeah,
still,
that guy finishing,
later,
I think, might be real.
Yeah.
It's so funny you talk about the like not taking shots thing, and I've been thinking about this since you mentioned this on Slack. Have you guys seen that show, The IT Crowd?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, I had a friend in high school who didn't know anything about soccer, but knew I was really into soccer, and he watched The IT Crowd, and in The IT Crowd, there's the scene about where they're talking about Arsenal, and he doesn't know anything about football, so he goes, "That's the thing with Arsenal; they always try and walk it in." And so one day I'm like having lunch at high school, and he comes up to me and he starts talking about soccer, and he goes, "Yeah, that's the thing with Arsenal. They're always trying to walk it in." And I was like, and I had never seen the show. And I'm like, "Tim, how did you know that? That's like really insightful." And then he's like, "I'm just telling this from the show, man." So I have been thinking about this since you brought this up the other day.
Oh my god, that's so good.
And it's maybe it's not coincidental that
it's
share an owner.
Perfect.
They share an owner. So.
It's perfect. Stan Kroenke's the Kroenkes have been hanging around too much. Any other Colorado things you wanna get off your chest?
Yeah, so I want to shout out 2 things. You mentioned who's the most important goal scorer on this team. It's still Cole Bassett. So when he gets further up the pitch, I think it's going to open up a bit more. I think it's going to feel a bit better. Also, and one last shout out: the super draft is not dead. I don't know how Moise Bombito fell to 3rd, but oh my god, this dude is the best center back in the league, probably. If you I think curve, it's insane.
I think I've told this story before, but like a bunch of teams tried to trade to 2 to take Bombito. Mm-hmm. And like it was like I can't remember who had the number 2 pick. It was like Orlando or something like that. but like a bunch of teams tried to trade up to get him. There were a lot
Well,
of
there
really
you go.
excited people. And you take it with the pick that TFC gave you.
Yep. It's yeah.
So how lovely.
The gift that keeps
Yeah,
on giving.
yeah, the Cole Bassett thing is I tactically I'm always very interested in like um I'm always very curious. So like a thing that coaches talk about a lot is like how do you get the third player in the box? Where like when you are in wide or cutback areas, like you need three people. And one of the things I don't like about 4-4-2s or 4-2-2s is like it's very hard to get three players in the box because it's either two strikers and a winger, but usually one of those players is the one playing the pass. So it's like you have to get the other winger or you have to get a midfielder. And like the distances are really big for the midfielders without it disrupting your transition defense.
Hmm.
And the Rapids have done a really good job of like you'll see a couple times like a fullback will come in to be like an extra body. And then you have like Bombito is so athletically talented that like they can
Hmm.
get away with it a lot.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's
it's
been
it's
crazy for like he's been lighting it up and interrupting, which he didn't do so much last year. Like he was very much an on the ball type of center back, and
I
now he's
believe
passing. Now he's breaking up plays. He's
I
doing it
believe
all.
his senior year was his first ever time playing center back too. I'm
Wow.
pretty sure he was a defensive midfielder like his whole life before
Yeah,
that.
you mentioned that. Yeah, no,
Yeah, very
he's
fun player.
he's not going to be on this team longer than 2025 at the longest.
You know,
He's
I
so
don't
good.
know. I don't know. I never know how to judge. I thought that about Kamal Miller. I thought Kamal Miller would move um, after his really good Montreal season, or after like Canada had a really good run and all the Canadian guys were moving,
Hmm.
and then he got traded for Bryce Duke. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's weird. It's weird because some of these players are so undervalued and some of them are so overvalued. It's like a
Hmm.
really weird market. And Ben's alluded to this already beforehand at the beginning of the season, right? The transfer market is just topsy-turvy and it's upside down right now with how American values kind of perceived.
it's
So
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a way
yeah,
we talked about this before that it's a wage thing because you're paid really well to play in MLS
yep.
relative to your ability. So it's like the transfer values are low because they have to pay you a lot. I don't know, it's kind of weird. And sometimes they're too high. I don't know. Whatever. That's the Rapids. I'm excited to keep following them. I it's fun to make fun of Chris Armas, but he always seemed like vaguely a nice guy, who like has been very unfortunate. So like I kind of hope they do okay.
Yeah, I'm rooting for
Um,
him.
So that's it. That's our rapids. The other thing we wanted to talk about today was we wanted to check in, get some listener questions, get a mailbag, the ASA mailbag. We don't do these very often, so it's always fun. And I feel like there's a lot of really cool things that we talk about at ASA that never end up in an article or a podcast. Um, that sometimes we can shed light on through mailbag questions. So, um, I
that's like
have the
90% of what we
questions.
talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I have the questions in front of me, so let's just we'll go in order, based on what ones I've got here. Um, Eric Friedlander, what teams have made biggest gains from last year in terms of shot quality? I looked into this a little bit. And Harrison, you looked at some receiving stuff, I know. The biggest gains in terms of shot quality differences have been Montreal has been a big one. Even when you take out the penalties, the difference is really, really significant. I think they're the highest shot quality. I'm trying to just pull up my table that I sent you guys. They're the highest shot quality in the league. Last year, they were like firmly mid-table. The other two teams in the top three, DC United and LA Galaxy, who are like having really, really good attacking seasons. On the flip side, Houston, Cincinnati, FC Dallas have all kind of hit like reasonably large declines in shot quality, which is kind of it's small. It's like 3%, which is a lot, but we'll see how that evens out over longer term. The other one that I really wanted to flag that was the most interesting to me out of this was the shot quality against. Number one, New York Red Bulls went from having like the highest quality chances conceded in the league last year to conceding the worst quality chances in the league this year. Total flip, 0.138 to 0.077.
Yeah, that's a
And that's
twice
huge.
50%. You're cutting the average value of your chances in half.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
like
not only that, but you also receive receiving. The receiving was
Hmm.
absolutely slammed into the ground compared to last year. So
And this has been a thing that like Doyle has talked about and a few other Red Bull people have talked about. Like they've dialed back the press a little bit. They're a lot more like, okay, like we actually have players who can pass. Like we don't have to. And their non-penalty XG is still actually quite low, like for themselves, but their non-penalty XG conceded is also very low. So it's I think that's really interesting, and I think there's they are a team who are absolutely thinking about that, which I thought was really interesting. Any other takes on that from you guys, or can we move on? That one, I don't
Real
think there's much
fast.
else to it.
One team that kind of stands out to me. I don't know where they ended up on your chart, but for receiving, when I was looking at them, was St. Louis. St. Louis has really taken a step forward in their attack, which is kind of funny because so much of their attack was so uh,
Fluky.
predicated upon yeah, it was predicated on accident, right? Like we're just gonna play chaos ball and we're gonna see what good happens. And they just had like a lot of like good vibes. And what did Doyle's thing on the podcast was variance and vibes, and that should have just
Yeah.
been like
So
that was their play.
so St. Louis on the attacking side, virtually unchanged. On the defensive side, they have seen the largest increase in shot quality in the whole league. 10.4% to 15.3%.
Yeah, and on the receiving side, like they went up about 13%.
Also, that's very that like again we say it all the time, but like receiving is a tremendous predictor of future goal scoring opportunities. It's very cool that that flags it up and those two charts are aligned. Question number two, from I'm walk. I don't know. A Revs fan though, so I can understand why their username is confusing. Is Carlos Heel getting balls less frequently in good places? Feels like the Revs are struggling to create mainly due to Carlos Heel not orchestrating that much. Um, have you guys watched the Revs much? Any Revs takes before I
his
drop some
receiving is
numbers?
way down.
No.
I
Uh,
understand. I
not
understand.
especially. I know I when we talked about this beforehand, I looked at some of his G plus stuff, but you looked at it in depth, didn't you?
Yeah, so I wanted to see because I think this one of the like first things I like wrote for ASA that just wasn't about TFC was looking at usage because I gotten really into basketball. And Carlos Heel was somebody who like popped big time in the usage numbers. And so I was curious, like when you build a team around like a very heliocentric player, like TFC had done it around Pozuelo, that was the premise. Carlos Heel, Nico Ladero, like those like heliocentric tens. If they can't get on the ball anymore, like that can legitimately detriment your team. However, unfortunately for this person, Heel is taking just as many touches in all the same locations. By third, he's getting into the box a little bit less, like 1.8 to 1.2, which is a meaningful decline. But he's always been like that zone 14 passer, but it still looks vaguely the same. His receiving is a little bit lower, but not too much. But really, he's just like doing a lot less with it. He's down from like a half an expected goal shot or created down to like 0.2, 0.25. His passes into the box are down. His carries into the box are down. His G plus passing is down. All that sort of stuff. It's only 7 games. I would expect that a lot of that is the team around him is declining. Um, like they do not have good attacking players. Like Tajon Buchanan is not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're just not that good a team, which is kind of a boring answer. But when you are that like ultra creative 10, you need people to pass to. So
Yeah.
that I think is unfortunately the answer with that team. We'll see if they do any summer business. They raked in like $30 million in transfer fees over a summer, and eventually they're gonna sell Buck for a ton of money. So we'll see what happens.
I mean,
Um,
they got a lot of players, so they kind of have I feel like they have their own little grouping of wingers and stuff that they don't really have a lot of room to add people right now, right?
I don't know. I don't know. Like it's also weird because they have a few good young players, like Bayrak Tarovic, like shows up as like a crazy
Yes.
next pro guy who's like very
Right.
interesting in MLS. I don't know. I feel like they should probably just tear it down and start again, like move on from all your older guys. But we'll see
Well,
what that ends up looking
Caleb
like.
Porter's not really a
No,
he
that's
likes his
well,
veterans,
well,
which is the
well.
problem.
No,
And I called that. I called that. That would be his defining trait when I wrote about them this offseason.
but it's
That is their defining trait, is whether or not they can use a lot of these young players, because
I know.
they re-signed Thomas Chikalski. Chikali?
Uh oh, Chankalai or whatever.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're having as much trouble as I am.
I don't know. His name is a mess.
Yeah,
I
Chankalaya.
would just say
Isn't that it?
I think
Chankalai?
it's Chankalaya.
I don't know.
Chunko.
That's definitely not the Argentinian way to say it.
No, certainly not. And I know I'm butchering it, so I'm a meme at this point in time, so it's cool. I've embraced it. Here's the thing. They spent some serious money to get him from Argentina this to actually he was on loan, and they made him a
Yeah.
permanent transfer this past offseason, which made him a DP.
I don't know why.
Yeah, that was really well. I do know why, because they saw goals. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
but he scored 6 goals from 2 XG.
They looked at
And
the
we
goals
know,
and
and
thought,
we
the
know.
game is not played on paper. All right.
I know, but we know the Revs are like a reasonably analytically inclined organization. Like that
They
is a
were
thing we
at
know.
5 years ago. Yes, not now.
No?
No. I mean, you got Tim, who was there, has left.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't feel like I don't know if
No,
they've
doesn't the what's his name, the president, Brian Bolello, doesn't he listen to this podcast?
I actually think he's one of the I will say he has
sorry, Mr.
definitely
Paul.
always given us a lot of very kind words. I will say that. But
Yeah.
I feel like the decision making that they have done in the past 5 years has kind of gone against a lot of that. I mean,
Well, yeah, I imagine it's well, like Bruce was like GM
Mhm.
coach combined kind of thing. Yeah, I can. Yeah,
I
fair
think
enough.
I think that's going to be the struggle here, is how to rebuild organizationally when so much of your organization was in one person. I think that's going to be the thing I'm most watching for, is, can Caleb Porter work with the front office to find this sort of common strategy? Because that's my biggest concern, is the Revs seem to want to buy and sell and develop and sell, and I don't know if that's how Caleb Porter wants to approach a soccer team.
Alrighty, next up. Vikas Mendirata. Benteke leads the league by a lot in both XG and big chances missed. How should DC fans feel about that? Will it correct by the end of the season, or is there something else happening? Harrison, the floor is yours. Big chances. Do we like them? Do we care?
big chances are. Does someone have a swear button? Do I have a swear jar?
I can put one on. I can
Ooh.
swear beep you.
Listen. I'm gonna get myself in a lot of trouble here, so just heads up. But like big chances in and of itself is a great idea, but when you start giving an arbitrary metric and introduce it into this model, it creates so much chaos, and it creates so many problems, and it's just like big chances are, because who decides and who actually says, oh, this is a good shot, or he should have scored here? And that's the idea, is basically you look at a shot and you make a determination on whether or not you think the scorer thinks that he should have scored. And ultimately Benteke takes a load of shots in front of goal, and so he's going to miss a lot. I mean, you'll have more analytical backing here in a second. I think Ben, or you have done some digging on this, but my initial reaction to this was big chances suck and I hate them. And anytime you bring that into the conversation, you're missing a key part, and that is that person's perspective on why they marked it as a big chance.
Ben, how do you feel about big chances?
Yeah, I feel pretty much how Harrison feels. And I think they're like, in terms of like actual quantitative value, they don't mean anything. I think if you're just like eyeballing a stat sheet, they can tell you who tends to take shots or get dangerous passes at a general level, but beyond that, they're not useful. And yeah, like Harrison said, if you have, let's say a striker has a certain percentage, like they have a finishing rate, let's just assume that exists, of like 0.6. they scored. That's crazy. Point
It's
three.
the worst striker ever.
um, like
Point
what?
nine.
Wait, yeah,
Point
fine. Point
nine.
nine. Well, actually, get into it. The point being is the more if you have it, you could have the same percentage rate of converting chances, and you're gonna as those chances increase, both the made and missed chances increase. So if
Yeah.
you're missing a lot of big chances, you're probably making some of them too.
Yeah, you're probably getting lots of big chances. You're gonna think. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I mostly agree with you guys, but I think there's some interesting things to talk about.
Mm.
So in general, models that have big chance flags track goals better than XG models that don't.
Mhm.
And so I think there's like a really the intuition behind that is that um, there are things models miss, right? So, for example, the ASA XG model does not know where the goalkeeper is standing. Okay,
Mhm.
so if you round the goalkeeper and you have an empty goal, it's from a bad angle. Okay, but it's an empty goal. It's going to get flagged as a big chance, but ASA is going to have it as a low XG chance because it doesn't know there's no goalkeeper. So there is some utilitarian value to big chances. However, in the day and age of tracking informed models where we know where all the players are, my understanding is that big chances doesn't help anymore. It really only does with more naive XG models.
Correct.
Um,
Mhm. And
so
my counter to that counter is that's absolutely true. And what I like the reason is you were missing information from just looking at X's and
exactly.
O's and that the person could see. However, we can't use that information that they saw to predict anything in the future because we don't have it. So I
Yeah,
would say it we miss the target more often, but our ASA model I trust more because it's having a less biased picture of whatever the new data is as a
yeah,
result.
it's in theory that those things should all even out, and it doesn't matter. Now on Benteke, how should you feel about this that he misses a lot of these big chances, or he has the most big chances to miss? As Ben previously mentioned, if you're getting if you're missing lots of big chances, it means you're getting lots of big chances, which is good. That is objectively a good thing. Um, I said this on a previous podcast, but like even if you are a bad finisher, if you have lots of XG, that's still a good thing than being a striker with less XG but being a better finisher. Obviously, you can do the math to what the trade-off is. I can assure you, Benteke gets enough XG and finishes enough of those chances. You're doing okay. The flip side of this is that Benteke is like a historically bad finisher. Um, as far back as the data we have goes, which is his first Liverpool season, he's like 80 goals from 120 XG, 110 XG, which is like the worst. Like of strikers to get 100 XG, it's probably the worst. However, and what I will say as a caveat, Benteke's three most prolific goal scoring seasons before his ones in MLS were seasons of 19 goals, 10 goals, and 13 goals for Aston Villa in the Premier League. And he had a 16 goal season for Genk. My guess is that he beat his XG in those seasons. I remember him scoring bicycle kicks, so I would say there's a pretty good chance he beat his XG in those seasons. I imagine he would not nearly look so bad if he went over his whole career time horizon. So long story short, he's probably a bad finisher. Does it matter? Not really, which is not a super satisfying answer. But I think this is what a lot of these finishing arguments come down to is that often the magnitude of these effects are much smaller than the magnitude of all the other things the players do, which is generally a good lens to approach finishing conversations with. The last question, which I think is the most interesting of these mailbag questions, does ASA receive training compensation from big clubs when your brilliant youth transfers to them, or is it a pro bono academy? Pro bono academy. In all seriousness, how could a future model encourage more technical training centers slash sites like ASA, and would a modicum of funding change that? So this was from at Oh Hi Mick G, whose AVI is the what's it called
Iron
the giant
Iron
who flies
Giant.
into the sky and everyone cries at the end of the movie.
Iron Giant.
Um, does ASA receive training compensation? No. ASA is very proud. Well, at least I am. I guess I can't speak for ASA, but I think everybody feels this way. A lot of people have come through ASA's hallowed halls and have gone to clubs. Ben, you were briefly with the Rapids. Ariel is at Bay right now. Kevin Minkus is at Chicago. Um,
Sam Goldberg at
AJ
Red
Barnold's
Bulls.
at Bay right now. Carl's at Houston. like I should stop because I'm gonna forget someone and then I'll feel bad. But like Akshay's at Atlanta, like
Atlanta.
there's people all like most of the clubs in MLS that have done analytics have engaged with ASA in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's conversations with people at ASA, whether that's like, hey, we're hiring, do you know anyone? That's a really common one. That's I'm sure if you look at the interview lists for clubs hiring analysts, there's a lot of ASA people in those. Um, it's very common. We don't get paid anything for that, obviously, but it is a place where people do good work, and you know that there's like an infrastructure for people to put good work out there. Um, ASA does research that like there are clubs not doing research to this level. The late Gary Gillade, who was like one of the first people doing analytics in the Premier League at Chelsea, when we put out G Plus, like put out a big statement being like, this group of hobbyists and amateurs have made a better possession value model than Opta and StatsBomb, which was like a really cool public moment.
Amazing.
How do you encourage this more? Is probably the more interesting question for us to discuss. I think we do a really good job, especially this year. We did a really good job of getting a lot of new faces into ASA, where it's kind of the gateway drug to soccer analytics, where you write a preview about the team because it's the only team you care about, and then all of a sudden you're writing like diatribes about recoveries and their predictive value. How do we do more of this? How do we get more people? How do we train with bunny ears more people to do soccer analytics?
I don't think that it's something that we do. I think it's something that I think it's something that other people have done. Everybody that's come in has basically come in and said, "Hey, what can I do? What can I learn? What can I where's the data, right?" And I think we've been very fortunate to where, you look at even back when we started with, Jared and Jason and Maddie and all these other individuals that, have are much quieter. I mean, the amount of people that we have behind the glass door that you never hear that are ASA, that are never,
Mhm.
talk. Like there's a ton of people
There's
that
100 people. There are 100 people in ASA Slack regularly conversing about soccer analytics.
and it like I can't keep up. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I joke about this with like you and I joke about this quite a bit because you asked me, "Oh, did you see this in Slack today?" And I'm like, "Dude, I did. I shut Slack and I'm not going back and reading that." There are so many conversations that are so well had, and I think that's where the richness comes from. Development is we just have this internal mentoring to where everybody's like, oh, you want to learn that? Oh, I already had that experience. But what I failed at is this. If you want to pick up from that, I can give you all my research or I can give you all my notes and go for it. And here's the data. And I think when you look at like what could we do better is empower. We could have more tools, more resources, more software at those disposals. And that just comes with money. Which we're doing the best that we can right now, and I don't think that necessarily changes with more money because this is a hobbyist center, right? So ultimately it comes down to how invested are you going to be in your own stuff. Like we want to give you the tools, you want to learn about stuff. I will tell you right now, I am probably one of the lowest men on the totem pole, and ladies, women have come in and done great things. I am so far below in terms of technical skills. That's something that I need to do better and something I want to do better. And I've been here from the start, and people will easily give me the time of day to ask the most inane, stupid. I'm not a data scientist. I'm a network engineer, right? Like I don't write a lot of scripts except for with Python doing stupid automation stuff, little tricks like that I script kiddie. We have so many people that take the time and want to mentor. I can't foot stomp that enough. The communication and time that people dedicate to other people, that's honestly that's our trademark right there. That's our paramount. That's what we do best.
I think I've told this story before, maybe not on the pod, but like my gateway into ASA was StatsBomb put out the Messi data, and I was like working at in grad school doing like grad school stuff late at night where I was working night shifts for something. And I was like, well, I'm going to play around with this. And I was making them in Excel. And Chu Kai Ho, who Ben, I think you saw at the game, was like, dude, these are cool. Like, how are you making them? And I was like, lol, Excel. And he was like, oh, dude, like, join this Slack. Like, there's people doing like really cool stuff. And within like 6 hours, Elliot is like teaching me R and how to plot this stuff. And it goes from like these horrible Excel heat maps used with conditional formatting to like decent plots generated from R. And that's how every person's entryway goes and every conversation goes. I've learned so much from Ben in R. Like Ben and I worked on a project together that like I cannot explain the level my skills grew from this project just from like, Ben, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And there are lots of people, Ben and Elliot and Ariel and Ariana and so many people who have like whether it's their job or they did it in grad school or like they learned it from whatever and there's so many people who are super generous with their time and that's where it comes from if you are willing to put the work in. And that is the second caveat that in terms of people learning these skills, it's like I actually think it's very important to say that there is a really, really nice soccer analytics community. It's not the way it used to be. It's very different now. It's a lot bigger now. But there are a lot of people. There are a lot of workshops that are free. There are YouTube tutorials that are free. There are GitHubs that are free. There are Slacks. There are Twitter group chats. There's a lot of resources out there. And if you tweet out, hey, I'm trying to learn how to make an XG map, or you find a post and you're having trouble, like people will help you. It is actually, I think it's a very judgmental community, but it's also a very helpful community. Shoot,
Well,
Harrison.
no, I think that Ben has a really unique perspective on ASA because I feel like Ben, you kind of came in early with us and then you've kind of departed, did your thing, came back, went to Colorado, came back. Like you've been with us at every stage, but you've been with us through the growth and through the growing pains, and you've seen both how we were then and
Yeah.
how we are now.
No, totally. So like, I mean, so my ASA story, I think my stats story, I'll even go back into that. Like, I loved math in school. I fucking hated stats. Sorry, another bleep sensor. Boop. I hated stats. I was like, I want to solve this perfect system of equations. I don't care how many fish Fred caught yesterday. But I also loved maps. And when I went to college, I started doing GIS and spatial statistics. And that's when I was like, oh, data is how you understand the questions you care about in the real world. And that clicked. And then I started watching soccer after the Rapids won the MLS Cup in 2010. And then I've eventually found Matt Doyle's column, which helped me understand the league in like 2012, 2013 eras. And that's when I found ASA through his columns, like in the early days, like right after the website had started. And through the, like, you were coding stuff by hand, you were like copying and pasting crap, like a lot of heavy legwork. And then eventually you're like, hey, we've got some shot XG data. Who, like, let us know if you want to look at it. And this is like, 4 years into me starting to learn R. And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to look at this because I can tell you, I know enough about stats and space to tell you that the data we look at in 2010 is garbage and doesn't tell you anything. So yeah, and then I got some data, published some stuff in 2016. Dissertation got real because I was in grad school, and that's when I backed out. That Ferris, and that's when I know I'm like, yeah, no, I can't even look at this anymore. Then I got my day job, started having time and mental energy to engage the Slack again, write previews again, and yeah, no, it's been such a cool thing to watch evolve. And for me, it was literally just the access to the data. Like, I had the coding skills, I had some soccer knowledge, I just needed the stuff. And I think that's where like StatsBomb having all of the free women's data that they put out there that they create, like that is really what it is. Like, people need the goods. They will find, like, if you're self-motivated, like pretty much everyone who joins ASA is, because that's how you join ASA. You motivate yourself to ask. And yeah, just give people the stuff. No one's gonna crack the code on your tracking data unless you give them your tracking data. So open up the floodgates, people.
And if you want to support ASA, a timely plug, We do have a Discord, a Patreon that gives you access to a patron Discord. Um, Again, that I want to be transparent that it's not going to like training initiatives. It's going to server
Servers.
costs. Yeah, expensive server costs. Um, but it does keep the lights on, and lots of people hard work keep the lights on. So and if you want to talk about MLS analytics, reply to the account, shoot us a DM. You want to learn about stuff, but you see all the names and faces on the website. Everybody is super, super generous with their time. Three questions that were like kind of funny that I thought we would talk about. Who will get the first ASA tattoo? Carl replied from Everybody Soccer. Carl replied, "I can answer that one. I would probably bet Carl will be the first one." So that's a gimme. Expected own goals. Do you like me? Yes, no. I will leave a note in your desk tomorrow, Evan and Eric. And then the last one, help me understand Sportex XG figures at Total Football. For those who are unaware, Sportech is the new data provider for the league, who are supplying the data for Apple TV, I believe. And those
Yep.
actually figures routinely look insane. And as of yet, every week, our the patron Discord is like desperately trying to crack the code of what is up with these XG numbers. There is no answer. Um,
Producers
yeah,
of Apple TV, please stop calling it XG efficiency.
Oh
Just don't
God.
talk
oh
about it
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Thank
Don't
that was
talk
a
you.
about it
thing.
anymore.
That was the thing. We're not even talking. We don't have time to get
Yeah, no,
into
move on.
XG
Move it on.
efficiency.
We're,
Move it
we're,
on.
Har-
mark this. We will come back to it.
we
Yes,
will.
we
We will
will.
come back to it. Harrison,
Quite a
you have
bit
a
of this.
guy for us, I believe.
I do. All right. So, how do you want to do this? You want to do this teams, or you want me to talk? How do you want me to lead this
Give
into?
however, give us some clues. Give us
All
some
right.
clues
So,
about who this guy is.
this young player comes from Budapest, and as a youth player, and then transferred.
Christian Nemeth. Is that who it is? Yes. There's only so many Hungarians. There's only so many Hungarians.
I hesitated even saying that saying Budapest just because I felt like I am so angry with you right now. I'm so angry
Okay.
because I was like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this is too obvious. Maybe this is too telegraphy. But who knows? Maybe I was gonna be like 17, went to Liverpool.
So I saw Christian Nemeth play in a preseason friendly against TFC in 2011 for Liverpool, and he was horrific. And then when he came back to MLS, I was like, "Oh, this guy's really good. What happened?"
Hashtag preseason.
Christian Nemeth. Tell us about Christian Nemeth. I haven't thought about him in a long time. Is he still
Yeah,
at
that's
SKC? I don't even know.
He is retired. Or actually he's still playing for Budapest. He went back home and played for his club team, and he is now scored 26 goals across 43 games there for them. Unfortunately, with Hungary, we don't have real super data.
No robust
no.
Hungarian
Yeah,
division data.
I didn't do a lot of looking. I could have probably gone out to see if Mike had something, or had some data or something on him. I'm sure he does. But yeah, I think what we started talking about, and this goes into a little bit what we touched on, and I'd like to talk about it more at length when we have more time later. But that's just game models and teams sitting. There's a bigger disparity between teams sitting back and teams that kind of deal with possession. And I think that those SKC teams are really interesting because they kind of were teams that got challenged to try to break down their defense, and the solution that they had was just take more bad shots. And I really like that's still like 2016, 2017. It stands out to me that they just took a lot of really bad shots, and it was because they were forced to break down, and they didn't have a player that could consistently break down good teams, and so they just took bad shots, and that ironically created more opportunities for them to break teams down because it would pull teams out of their defensive positioning, and I think that's really interesting. I'd like to. I kind of wonder if that won't happen a little bit this season. I'm waiting for a team to be that team. So, anyways, that's what came about from Christian Nemeth, and there you go. He's that. He's that. Remember that guy.
The only like vivid MLS memory I have of him is that his first goal was like a 100th minute winner or something. Like a super late, I think against New England or the Union, something, one of the East Coast teams. But it was like a 97th minute 4-3 winner, something crazy.
94th minute, Philadelphia.
Nice.
Yeah, you
Well,
got a good memory, Kieran.
Yeah, it was.
You got the guy in like 5 seconds. You got all these
but
crazy
there's like
details.
two. How many Hungarians have played? It's like him and Nemanja Nikolic, and we've already had Nemanja Nikolic as a remember this guy, so it shouldn't have been him. Alrighty, I've got trivia. I've got thematic trivia. I've got Colorado questions. I've got Carlos Heel questions. We're on it.
The heliocentric number 10.
Oh, I never thought about that. That's a good pun.
You made it 20 minutes ago unintentionally. I
did say heliocentric, but never clocked it. Ben, you won last week, right?
Yes.
I'm going to give you first pick. Six questions. Take a crack. Which one do you want?
I'm starting with the easy one again. Number 1.
Alrighty, number 1. This was given to me by Elliot, who also gave me a question that will appear on a future episode. That it's a topical one. So I mentioned Chad Barrett last week, and that he had played for 7 MLS teams. There are only 5 other players who have played for at least 7 MLS teams. Name 2 for 1 point each.
Quincy Amarikwa.
Give me your second name.
Kai Kamara.
Kai Kamara
played for the Rapids.
Kai Kamara is 1. He's played for like 13. Quincy Amarikwa has not played for 7.
He must be like 6.
It's a good guess. He's played for a lot.
He played for so many.
Yeah.
All right, Harrison.
Harrison, would you like to nick 1 point, keep it 1-1? Kai Kamara was by far the easiest one.
Yeah, that was super easy. I feel like there's another easy player out there, and I'm just failing. I'm thinking about who went through Toronto. Because I feel like
there is one with 8. The other 3 all have 7. And the one with 8 did, in fact, play for Toronto. That is the hint I will give you. Throw a name out. Give me a name. Any name.
Oh, my God. Alan Gordon.
It's a good guess, but no. Dom Oduro has 8.
Damn it.
I should have gotten that
Nathan
one.
Sturgis, James Riley, and Jalil Anibaba.
Nate Sturgis is another former
Jalil Anibaba is a great shout. I didn't think about that, but
Oduro's the one we should have gotten.
I should have had Dom Oduro.
Good Lord.
Both of us should have had Dom Oduro.
Yeah. Alrighty, Harrison, you're up. You're down 1-0. 2-6 are available.
4.
Alrighty, number 4. Benteke might be a stinky finisher, but he does possess a signature celebration when he does score. What athlete is his celebration copied from? Do you know the Benteke celebration origin story?
I don't know the Benteke celebration. I have no idea. I'm trying to think of what he does when he celebrates.
Ben, do you know it?
I haven't watched any DC this year, so no.
Okay, then I'll give you both the hint that he like puts his hand to his chest and pushes down. That's his like a mimic.
Oh, so is it sorry, do you want an athlete's name or a type of athlete?
An athlete's name. It's like a specific athlete does this celebration. A very famous specific athlete. It's not a soccer player.
Is it a wrestler, right?
It could be a wrestler. It might not be. But this person's very famous.
I don't know anything about wrestling, so yeah.
All right, give me a name. Give me any name.
Kurt Angle.
Kurt Angle. It's not Kurt Angle. If Belgian born and raised Christian Benteke had a Kurt Angle celebration, I feel like we would know about it.
Is it Muhammad Ali?
No, it's not Muhammad Ali. It's LeBron James. LeBron James does the pushing it down celebration.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
See, when I think of LeBron James celebrate, I guess I don't. It's not a celebration, but I always
think of the chalk,
right?
Yeah. That's a fair thought. All right, Ben, you're up. What do you got here?
Let's do 3.
All righty, Rapids question. The Rapids have not 1 but 2 pairs of players who share a last name. And in this case, they share a last name where one is with the first team and one is out on loan. For 1 point each, name both.
So there's 2 sets of identical twins that have both been on the Rapids roster. First, you're talking about the Cabral twins, Remy and Kevin.
That is one of them.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
The other twins are the Nyasi twins. Actually,
Okay.
no. Only Sana played for the Rapids. I take it back.
So I'm gonna have to take that as an answer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Oops.
you've claimed one. The other two are not related. They just have the same last name. Where one is on loan and one is with the first team. Harrison, do you know it?
No.
Oh, this is right now.
Right now, active.
Right
Okay,
now.
actively.
That's Heel, Nachos and Carl's. Oh no,
Well, we're talking about the
no, they both
Rapids.
played this season. They both played this season.
And they're not
We're
related.
also talking about the Rapids, not the Revs.
Who's loaned out?
Rapids.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you
Navarro?
both. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. It is
Oh,
Navarro.
right.
Miguel and
Miguel
Rafael.
Navarro. I did forget
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. Good shout.
Good
That
claim,
counts.
Harrison. It's 2-1. You can equalize. What question do you want? 2, 5, or 6?
Let's go with 6.
Alrighty, I gave you the opposite of this question last pod where we talked about short players losing headers. But thus far, there's only one player to contest at least 5 headers and win all of them. Who is it?
Benteke?
It's a good guess. I think he's like 8 for 9 or something, but it's not Christian Benteke. Ben, can you steal?
Said fuck it, Bombito.
It's a good guess. It's another Canadian center back. It's Kamal Miller. 12 for 12.
Wow.
Nobody else is better than 8 for 9. Ben, you're up. You can put some distance between you. You've got 2 or 5 available.
Let's do 5.
Carlos Heel and Christian Benteke shared the pitch together for half a season. At which club?
Oh my god, I don't know this crap.
It was a while ago, but it did happen.
Carlos Heel and Christian Benteke.
Benteke almost assisted a goal. I watched the highlights to check to see if he assisted it, but he didn't.
God, I don't even know what club. I'm assuming it's his Belgian club, so I'm just gonna guess Genk.
It's a good guess. Benteke did play for Genk, but Carlos Heel did not. Harrison,
Gotcha.
can you steal and equalize it 2-2?
They both on there for Villa?
They absolutely were. They both shared. Heel was at Villa for a season and a half. Benteke left at the first summer. 2-2. Harrison, you can win it at the death. At the death with a Rapids question, and I'm telling you, if you don't get it, Ben's gonna get it. The Rapids play in a supporter-driven derby that isn't really a derby, like most MLS teams. It takes place against their Western Conference foes, Real Salt Lake. TFC Columbus have the Trillium Cup. Cincinnati Columbus have Hell is Real. What is the name of the derby between? It is the Rocky Mountain Cup. You are absolutely right. And Harrison takes the victory on a Colorado Rapids question. He's celebrating. He's got flowers in his hand. Harrison, give us a speech. Don't give us a speech.
I have 0 speech. Join ASA Slack. Commit to a project today.
Please write articles. We need them.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it there. Hopefully we didn't go too long. I can't actually see how far we're in. But if there's one thing to leave you with from today, it's that if you are interested in soccer analytics, which you definitely are because you're listening to this podcast, but if you've ever thought like, hey, I have this idea, but I don't know how to do it, shoot somebody a DM or reply to a tweet or DM the ASA account, whatever you want. Some of the coolest stuff that happened at ASA started from someone being like, I have an idea and I don't know how to do it. So I'll leave us there. That's all for today. If you want to support the website and the show, the Patreon Discord is there. As I mentioned before, you can just look up American Soccer Analysis Patreon. It's $5 a month. You get into the Discord. There's amazing conversations. I got a Discord channel notification talking about Canada's kits today, so I don't know what that was about. But it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of interesting conversations in there. And you get the trivia questions in there before the episodes come out, so you can answer the questions yourself, which people have been a fan of. So that's all for today. We will be back in 2 weeks. We won't be talking about the Rapids. Maybe we will. Maybe something interesting will happen.
I'll try and stop it now.
We'll be talking about something else. That's all from us. And as Mr. Ian Lamberson would say, enjoy the soccer.
We won the game. That's what you do in soccer games. We rubber road in a venue where the team does pretty well at home. What are we complaining about? That some more on the right, that they have more shots than us, thinking that's important.
Actually, analytics in soccer, if no one here has figured it out,
Doesn't mean a whole lot. Analytics and statistics are used for people who don't know how to analyze the game. I'll be very honest with you. This isn't baseball, football, or basketball. We have a very important